Well, it's about damn time. Yes, for the very few of you who this will matter to, seriously, this is actually happening. I said there would be a Season 2 of Warframe content. I'll eventually say there's going to be a Season 3 of Warframe content for Ramble Entertainment. Hi, I'm Scott from Ramble Entertainment, Chaos-SD on PS4, PC, Switch, and yeah, we're back. So I'll get into this at the end, and here's a little itinerary, or maybe it'll be on this side. I don't know. I have a lot more video editing prowess now that I've been actually working in the field. I'm here in this video to do a full analysis of TennoCon, and I mean like a full analysis. There's a lot of people who are giving reactions. There's a lot of people who are kind of talking about things. There's people getting things completely wrong, like the Plains of Duviri is the next open world. It's probably not. I mean, it might have an open world kind of segment to it, but it's probably not. They've even made it pretty clear that that's not exactly what it is, but we'll get to that. Yeah, we're here to break down TennoCon, and this video is the first of 4 where we're going to talk about, this one we're going to talk about what we're likely seeing out of TennoCon this year, because this year is a lot more opaque. It's going to be harder to really get what we're getting out of TennoCon. So like last year, it was very clear we weren't getting Railjack and we were getting Fortuna. That was like plain as day. But this year, it's like, what the heck are we getting, if anything at all, other than the new war? So I want to watch everything that was out of TennoLive again, and then I want to break it down. I really want to get into the nitty-gritty and do kind of a hyper analysis like I used to love doing, and I still love doing. So for those who are super interested, as I had said, here or here, I don't know which side the graphic's going to go on until I actually do it. I'll get into where I've been, why I haven't been creating content, things like that towards the end, since most people will be more interested in TennoLive analysis at this time. So, Louie has a lot to say today. So, let's go ahead and get into it. If you hear any background noise, that's just going to be my computer playing TennoLive. So, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So one of the first things is the whiteboard. Immediately, like a lot of people that I've talked to, a lot feel that they've been really behind on the whiteboard, and I honestly don't think that's the case. They've already gotten 3 Warframes to us, and we already know 2 more that are on the way that we're likely seeing this year. Apparently Gauze is right around the corner. So that first thing on the list is probably Gauze. We're seeing Gauze with almost, I would say, even a month's time frame. So, and especially with the rate that things have been turning around from PC to consoles, we'll all see it within a month. For those that don't know, they've been trying to push the PC and the console life cycle a lot closer together. The purpose of this would really be for things like cross-save and cross-play. Obviously, they've said that their first goal is cross-save, because crossplay is difficult because PC is often the kind of testing bed where they put things out and try to get all the bugs out so they can get it through cert as fast as possible. But they've been pushing that certification process, things like the cursor update, where they created a more interactive menu with cursors, even on PC, using controllers. Using a controller, you now have access to a cursor across all the menus, almost all the menus. I think it's almost all the menus. Same thing on console. Now we have a cursor that acts as a utility tool that helps with basically pushing things into certification a lot faster. They recently had their fastest certification ever. And it was a small update. It was a tiny update. For those that don't know, they've been pushing out Nightwave, and they've been pushing Prime Access forever across all platforms, but they've gotten Nightwave out on all platforms at the same time. And then probably the next big step was getting Wukong Prime out. Wukong, or not Wukong Prime, I'm sorry, the Wukong update out a lot faster than any other certification before that, where basically rework came out on PC, I think it was on Tuesday. Then on Wednesday, that same week, it was in certification. Next we knew it was Thursday, and we already had it on console. I think those were the exact dates of it. And then the next week was TennoCon. Now, personally, this is kind of funny. I thought they really wanted to, and I still think they do. I think they want to have one of those big E3 moments at TennoCon, and they kind of did this year, where it's like, and it's out now. And they didn't even do the "it's out now" thing at TennoCon. They were like, it'll be out after the event. They did that with Wukong Prime Access, which anybody who can, look at the math saw that coming. And of course, they did that with Nightwave Series 2. Nightwave Series 2 is pretty nice, by the way, in my opinion. We'll talk about that with eventuality. So for me, I thought this was, since they had said that like there's not going to be like a huge epic reveal like Fortuna and Railjack. It's just going to be, we're going to talk a lot about what we're working on and what's coming and what is already coming, which was Railjack, which I mean, we even knew the VIP system existed. I think many had given up on it. We knew the new war was coming. We knew everything that was coming. We even knew about the Duviri. We just didn't know that it was now a Kojima production. So basically, my thought going into this TennoCon, initially after last year, since we have plenty of time as they're, getting all ramped up and talking about what's coming, my initial thought was that we would be getting a PvP update. And it's interesting because now, 2 weeks after TennoCon, that's one of the biggest things that's being talked about, that's one of the biggest things that's being talked about is Steve's comments on the state of PvP. This is happening. And how he really feels like they've done a disservice to it and they want to bring it around. My thought after last year's TennoCon, immediately after, I was like, I think next year we're going to be looking at what they're doing with PvP. And then the year kind of disproved that, obviously they've been working on Railjack. We found out, I think it was a week or two after last year's TennoCon, that Railjack, as nice and as polished as it even looked back then, that had been cobbled together at the last minute. That basically, like, they had concepted that from one of Steve's personal streams, and then they had just gotten it working. You were able to look below deck in the ship, and it was just plain. There was nothing there. It was just the kind of boxish art, like layout style that devs do. We can even talk about that in the art panel if we bring that up later. But Yeah, so there was a lot of work to be done. So since I changed my guess of what this year would be from PvP reveal, my bet was going to be that it's the E3 moment, and it's out now. But since we would have killed ourselves in the audience if that was the case, my bet was basically we're going to get the new war. It's going to come with a small slice of Railjack, and it's going to be out within a week or two after TennoCon on all platforms. That was a bet to clearly lose, and it was a good bet to lose. I mean, we all won at TennoCon, but yeah, my literal thought was that they want that like powerful and it's out now moment, and I think they still do. And I think we're going to continue seeing them push for that throughout the year. And so, yeah, lost that bet. Totally worth losing. And then, yeah, so now that they've kind of pushed through a lot of the intro segment, they're talking about sending a person to space, which technically they're not exactly doing. You can go to space if you want, is what it sounds like from the fine print. I'm fine with that. I think it's a cool thing to invest in. It's a cool kind of piece of advertising for the game where it's like, hey, we want to send you to space if you want to go, but you don't have to. I could kind of even see myself, as if somebody won that, I don't know, move to London, Ontario, and open the Warframe bar or something like that. I know it's not the best idea in the world, but that'd be pretty cool to do with that too. Just buy a piece of property and be like, okay, we're going to build the Warframe bar here for every year at TennoCon. But then what if they move TennoCon? Anyway, so let's get back to the whiteboard. To those that don't know, Ramble Entertainment, the excuse is in the name. So getting back to the whiteboard, and I am going to timestamp this video for those who are interested in just getting to the meat of it. So in fact, here's a list of timestamps. I really hope that graphic didn't appear on the opposite side of my head when I was editing this video. They got to Deck 12 Exploiter. That's an easy one. The Gas City Amalgams. That one took a bit longer than it seemed like they had intended, and I think it still turned out for the best. One of the best boss battles we've had in a long time. One of the best game modes we've had in almost forever. A game mode that they've even said is going to shift their perspective on how they build out game modes, on how they reward the players. And so there's a lot of important in there, because we definitely want the Disruption game mode allows us to obtain nearly... Oh, don't you dare poop on me. This is what I get for letting him drink his green tea. So we'll cut this part out. All right, so now that Louie's done shitting himself, and before we continue with getting to Dan Trachtenberg, the director of Cloverfield Lane and the director of the new intro cinematic, let's go ahead and talk about just finishing up the whiteboard. They did Deck 12 Exploiter and the Gas City and Amalgams, which is kind of another introduction to pieces of the Sentients, how the Sentients are going to interact with the factions. The Disruption game mode, which is huge. The fact that mode is so successful, even if it doesn't feel rewarding because it's rewards that most people have, the rate at which you earn rewards in that game mode changes the game. And Rebecca has even made a statement to such in an interview, I think it was with The Verge, that basically this is going to make them look back at older game modes. I think one that really stands out to me that that me and mine have been playing with the release of Wukong Prime has been ESO. It is a game mode where you achieve a score, and that score could potentially alter how you receive rewards. It seems like one of the easiest ones that's already in place to fix, where basically okay, if you manage to achieve A to S in the first tier, then you get rank C rewards, and so forth and such. The first tier is usually the hardest when you jump into ESO, for those that don't know, to achieve that high enough efficiency. Of course, there's probably some some pro out there who's just like, no, it's not. That ESO is easy. Anyway, so with that in mind, I think this might be one of our first hints at something we might still potentially see this year. So they bring Dan Trachtenberg up to the stage, and we get to see the intro cinematic. And I think this to me is possible this year. So like unlike seeing the full flushed out Railjack that we saw, we're not seeing that. To those that don't know, we're not getting Railjack this year. We might still get the segment of Railjack that they said was coming with the new war, but I think that with the shape of things, with how everything has panned out, and with how big their scope continues to grow, and this is another thing I even wanted to discuss, and I'm actually going to be bringing on a fellow player on the show in person to have discussions about, their scope continues to grow, and it's weird how they have done the opposite of other live services, where instead of piecemealing out pieces of updates, they're instead now just bringing it in one big swoop. But they've also, I'll save it for that video. So yeah, I think that the new intro quest and new intro content might be something we actually see this year. And obviously I say that with some trepidation. We have a full intro cinematic, so they know what direction they want to go with the intro. And it's just an intro quest, so it doesn't need to be something that adds to the current lore and pushes forward the current lore. It just has to get everything set up for the new players to start going, and for the veterans to still enjoy. But I think that this could potentially be one of the pieces we see this year, even if the least likely piece. What's interesting is they're giving away a lot of lore that it took us years to finally get answers on. And obviously now we have the answers, but there was that decision to be made of, well, do we want players to know that Teshin is a Dax, or that he's a soldier that Warframes have fought in the past? Do we want players to potentially have hints at what a Tenno might be? Because to veteran players, it's probably pretty obvious that the young girl running in the scene right here is a Tenno. It's interesting. A few more interesting notes about the intro cinematic here. A lot of people like to point to Magnetize not being able to be played like that. Well, guess what? Excalibur's Radial Javelin doesn't do that either. It kills like maybe 5 people if you're lucky. That killed like 50 fucking people. Grinier. And it doesn't do that. But there's also a part in this intro cinematic where Volt is using his first ability, Chain Lightning, I think it's called, but he's using it persistently. It's not just fired, and it'll be coming up here towards the end of the cinematic, so I'll point it out when we get there. And here's the portion of Mag's Magnetize that she doesn't do, and it's like he's firing a beam. And I think it would be really cool to get augments for Radial Javelin, for his Chain Lightning, and for Mag's Magnetize, because for those who for some reason want Mag reworked because, I don't know, she's still one of the top 10 most damaging frames in the game. Yes, she's squishy, but I would like to see that then for Radial Javelin, to make that ability useful for the first time ever. And for Volt's Chain Lightning, which should be coming up here shortly. So, and there it is. He's using it persistently, not just bam. It's kind of like Wisp, and that's cool because an architecture for that ability is now already in place for a game. A persistent channeled move that constantly fires a damaging ability in a single kind of AoE direction. So it would be nice to see Volt get that. A lot of people really enjoy Volt, really thought Volt was cool in this trailer. I thought he was the least impressive. I don't like Volt speed. I hate that they named his final ability Discharge. Was ist fuck? And there isn't a ton of synergy between his abilities. I was actually pretty surprised when they... And not every frame needs synergy. There does seem to be this notion of, like, if a frame lacks synergy, then it's, then it doesn't really matter. Technically, Wukong's abilities now do not have a lot of synergy between them. They just go well together. And that doesn't mean synergy. Synergy means being unified, basically using one ability within another. And that's good for some frames, but not all frames. But what I would like to actually see for Volt is that synergy, because I don't see why we can't blast his shield with Chain Lightning to then charge it, so enemies that walk through it take damage or are even stunned walking through the shield. That would be cool. And I don't see why we can't kind of charge up his Discharge. Change that name. I don't see why we can't charge up his Discharge with Chain Lightning. Basically, point at enemies that have already been Tesla'd with a Discharge and charge them up even more, create a more powerful attack with his first ability. His first ability doesn't even need to be that strong to be able to combine with the other abilities. Another example would be basically the same concept as Wisp. Wisp creates stationary buffs within the field of play. So Volt puts his shield down, he charges it with his Chain Lightning, and then he uses speed and runs through it, and now he's not only running really fast, he can also create kind of an electric proc or even electric damage ability by running at enemies. Really cool concept. Not entirely beyond the realm of possibility from a design perspective, from things we can observe within the existing gameplay. Anyway, so there was a lot there. Beyond that, there was a lot of lore in there. Things like Orokin Bulk Horse, really cool. The Grineer fighting for the Orokin and Dax soldiers fighting alongside the Grineer. I was really surprised that they wanted to reveal things like this. I think it says a lot for the direction in the game and how they're kind of cementing in the existing lore. So I think that because there's kind of so much solidified in that trailer, and then they go ahead and confirm that they have plans to create a mag augment based around Dan Trachtenberg's comments to the dev team working on that trailer. I think they have a lot in place for this. This isn't a War Within where we get the trailer 5 months later, they're still penning up the script, and finally, we tweet out like the existing script. That's not the situation here. It's very hard to discern where in production they are with the existing new intro, but I think that it's not a situation of the War Within. So they reveal Grendel and Gauze, and we don't really get much more on them. There was some stuff from the art stream. I'm not sure if I'm going to put a video together for the art stream or not. I am going to be putting together a video for they're talking about Wukong Prime, and they're going to talk about Nightwave Series 2. To kind of get ahead of things before I just make a jump in the video, I'm going to be talking about... I'm going to be making 4 videos. This video basically analyzes what's probably going to be coming to us before the end of 2019. And then I'm going to do an analysis of Railjack beyond just like what pieces of Railjack from TennoLive 2019 that we're probably getting this year. And then I'm going to be doing the Railjack analysis, the New War analysis, and Plains of Duviri analysis. So there's all 4 videos. One thing that I can also talk about while they bring up the voice of Nora Knight is difficulty, because a lot of people are talking about this. No surprise. One of the things about Warframe is that unlike a lot of live services, the discrepancy or your average of a new player and a veteran experience is like here and here in between the two. It's like 300 to 800 hours. The discrepancy between a new player and a veteran experience in Warframe is about 6 times that. And that's probably some pretty darn accurate math, because even for a new player to become a veteran, to experience veteran things, which some of those things can't even be experienced anymore, so you have to kind of put on your veteran docket, have things that don't exist in the game anymore, is roughly 15 to 2,500 hours. That is the circumstance of Warframe as a larger live service RPG. Third-person shooter, RPG, dungeon crawler, open world, spacefaring. Yeah, they're just kind of tallying on bullets of things to call Warframe now. This is kind of the conundrum, and also a thing I've been discussing with other players and even streamers, that it's not only hard to continually retain veterans, even though veterans do consistently come back to the game, it's hard to retain your streamer and your content creator base, and that isn't even that's a problem that didn't even escape me. It's not that the 2 years I've been gone has been entirely that I haven't been playing Warframe. I've been playing Warframe a ton. It's just that life beckons, and I'll get to that at the end of the video, as I said. But a lot of Warframe's current existence has been getting a lot of new players in. As they said in an interview with Mogamu, the thing that draws in the most players ever is not new content, it's not a big drop, it's just doing TennoLive. They have their most new users signed on from that. Are you really? That's what I get for giving him green tea. Anyway, so looks like we're back. Lewis shit the bed again. They start talking about the whiteboard more, and this is something I want to touch on in several videos. So I'm going to pause right there, because I've seen like 6 sources say that with the Duviri paradox, they revealed their next open world. And if my mic wasn't in front of my face right now, I would be hitting my head against the desk. Do just a tiny, like, I know we're super deep into this video game, and at places like Polygon, Kotaku, and GameSpot, Spot. I always get those 2 screwed up. IGN, I know a couple of those names probably didn't, they weren't the ones who, a couple of them didn't say that it's the new open world, but several of them did. In the initial dev stream of the year, when they created the whiteboard, they intentionally changed the name of Plains of Duviri from Plains, like the Plains of Eidolon, to Plains, like the thing in the fucking air. Which is fine. And Steve even said, so Rebecca had, another thing that happened in an interview was that we would see the reveal of like concept art and like the early workings of the next open world. That didn't happen here. Steve even dismissed it at the beginning of TennoLive 2019. He said, he was just like, yeah, we're not going to be showing the next open world here. That shocked me, that operator. So why are people saying that the Duviri paradox is the next open world? It's not. It might be. There might be pieces of the Duviri paradox that is open world. Like we might get an open tile set for it, and I'll go into a whole nother video about my analysis of it.
You were gonna say a JoJo thing,
but to me, and we know so very little about it so far. I completely forgot to scream at TennoCon, Kojima, eat your heart out. But I think what the plains of Duviri, the Duviri paradox is the next phase for Warframe. The Sentients have basically been the phase of the last 3 years, and it's been a long phase, and we've not gotten a ton of Sentient stuff. I'm sure they've learned a lot from it, but we have a long way to go. You have feather sticking out. Like, fix yourself. You're in front of people.
Smoking's bad.
It kind of sounds like you smoked a pack.
I think we won't be seeing anything out of the Duviri until next year. So it's nice to get a trailer, kind of get an idea of what the heck is in their heads. But I think basically we're going to start to... The Sentients are now going to be in the game. And we'll get to in a second, New War. The Sentients are now going to be in the game. And next we're going to start moving into the Duviri paradox. And we'll get to that. So here we see the Sentient mothership, which... For those that don't know, who, didn't see the art panel discussion, who haven't known before this, the Sentient mothership is actually the Sentient tile set. It is the mothership is actually the process of being rebuilt into the tile set. It sucks up debris and ships and things like we've seen in the teaser image from the start of the year to rebuild itself. I think that my initial thought was that we were going to have another Kuva Fortress situation within the Origin system. We would see sentient carriers or the sentient mothership moving around the Origin system, invading planets. I think this is still going to be the case. For those that are into it, and there is a huge segment of the audience that is into Kuva flooding, and getting Kuva, and getting ribbons, and rolling the ribbons. It has created a lot of activity on planets and nodes that just probably saw so little activity before the Kuva Fortress. So we might not see sentient carriers moving about the system, but instead what we might see is just the sentient invasion is affecting over here, these 2 or 3 planets now. Where are you going? Where are you going? And... then, it'll move about the system given a period of time. A few comments on the New War as we move into the Railjack segment. We know that we're getting sentient arms with the New War, so that is a new system per se. We don't entirely know the consistency of the sentient arms, what their purpose will be. Initially, way back when the sentient arms were first concepted, it was that they were going to replace an arm on our Warframe. Kind of like putting a focus lens on a Warframe, which is just a huge mistake. I hate focus lenses. I hate them so much. I don't use any... When all of my lenses got removed, I think I put them on 2 things. Plague... one of the plague weapons and Ivara to farm focus, and that was a huge mistake because I hate using those things now.
Who was that?
I hate that they take away from standard experience, and everybody's different, but yeah, sentient arms. They were going to be something that was going to replace our Warframe arm and change the way that played. Then, with the advent of the arch guns, the heavy weapons, we were told that sentient weapons could work within that vein. The sentient arms could work within the vein of heavy weapons, arch guns. Cool. Which means we wouldn't be replacing our arms. I still kind of like the concept of you put it on a Warframe and it changes the way that plays, and it's there. It's just a part of that Warframe now. There is something interesting there, especially as a player who builds multiple Warframes for varying builds, and because I'm kind of OCD about keeping my color palettes. You trying to communicate?
Hun Hao and so on. So that's Era, and that's
Oh, chill out.
La's brother leading her army to kill Gal and hopefully forgive her.
So, I think it's gonna be kind of a blend between the scale of the War Within and the Second Dream, where we get end game content, which I do think, to all the naysayers out there, we are pushing towards ever so slowly. It takes time. It it's something they don't want to rush into, kind of like I think the raids turned out, where it was laws of standing on buttons. Are we going to see a raid? I think it's possible. I would love to dive into this further. I'm not sure how and in what video, but Warframe, I think, stands to do raids so differently from other games that because they already have this architecture. He pooped again, and this time I'm not cutting the video.
Okay, I'm really nervous. I'm going to stand up for this. Like pacing.
They already have this architecture in place of randomly generated worlds, where
pull your pants up.
You have tiles and you play on those tiles.
Thank you.
And then
the
you
breathtaking thing. I see.
and
yes.
each time the map is almost completely different. I mean, you have very similar tiles, but they're always arranged differently. This could be applied to raids, and I don't see why not. You could have 10 tiles that have puzzles on them, and each instance has a different amount of puzzles, where this one time we only had a single puzzle tile, but we had like 5 enemy raid tiles where it's basically like a defense where you have to hold off like very high level enemies for a certain period of time or a certain number of waves, or like a survival or something like that, where each tile is almost like a game mode. Or like there's a master tile, and then there's tiles in between them to connect them, and each one is kind of like a challenge that you have to get through, and then by the end of the raid you get to a better boss battle than what we've seen before. The Lollapalooza, the Rapopolis, the rap battle, whatever the heck you like to call the thing that came on Jupiter, definitely a better structured boss battle. If it had more health to the damage phases, I would, and same thing applies to Exploiter Orb. If it had more health, then it would probably be a closer to raid tier fight. They are, I would say, hands down still better than the Eidolons and the Profit Taker, because it's not, well, you bring Chroma. No, it actually, you have the variety of Warframe, which is, I think, is still super important to endgame content, still being able to access that variety, but also accessing challenge at the same time. And to ramp up that challenge, I think the answer is yes, give it more health. Let's give it more health. And I think this will also be part of the answer to how we'll see some of these systems that are actually dispersed throughout the Railjack. You're not going on my microphone. Throughout the Railjack demo that we'll actually be getting this year. So I'm going to go feed my bird. I'm going to give it a pause, and what we'll come back to is talking about Railjack and the new content. See you soon.